This is why your energy disappears in crowded places. Crowds don't just annoy you, they trigger something deeper. And the real reason behind this, no one talks about it. Because most people assume it's about noise, about too many people, about personal space. But it's not really about any of that. It's about something that was built inside you long before you ever walked into a crowded room. And once you understand what that is, the way you see yourself in those moments completely changes. Picture this. You walk into a busy place, a mall, a wedding, a packed restaurant, even a work event. And within minutes, something shifts. It's not dramatic, it's subtle, like a quiet drain being pulled somewhere inside you. You start scanning the room without meaning to. You feel slightly on edge. Conversations feel like effort. You find yourself drifting toward walls, exits, quieter corners. And the longer you stay, the more you feel like you're slowly disappearing. People around you seem fine. Some of them seem energized. And you're standing there wondering why this feels so exhausting. You might call yourself an introvert. You might say you just don't like people. But here's the thing. It's not really about people. You probably love certain people deeply. You can talk for hours with one person you trust. So it's not people. It's something else entirely. And here's where it starts to get interesting. When you're in a crowded space, your brain is doing something it was never designed to do at that scale. It's trying to process everything at once. Every face is a potential signal. Every conversation nearby is a data point your brain feels it needs to monitor. Every laugh, every glance, every shift in energy, your nervous system is quietly cataloging all of it, even when you're not consciously aware of it. This isn't weakness. It's actually a form of heightened perception. People who feel drained in crowds are often the same people who notice things others miss, who pick up on tension in a room before anyone else, who can tell when someone isn't okay just from the way they're sitting. That sensitivity doesn't turn off in a crowd. It amplifies. So while someone else might walk into a room and only register people and noise, your system is registering the mood of the room, the awkward energy in the corner, the person who looks uncomfortable, the underlying tension between two people who are smiling but not quite okay. You're not just existing in the space, you're absorbing it. But that's only the surface layer, because underneath that sensitivity, there's something much older at work.
Crowds are not just physical spaces. Psychologically, they represent something very specific. They represent a context where you cannot control how you are perceived. Think about that for a moment. In a one-on-one conversation, you have some sense of where you stand. You can read the other person. You can adjust. You have context. There's a kind of safety in that, not because you're performing, but because the environment is manageable. In a crowd, that control disappears. Anyone could be watching. Anyone could be forming an opinion. There are too many moving pieces to track, too many possible interpretations of everything you do. And for people who, at some point in their lives, learned that being perceived wrong had consequences, that loss of control doesn't feel neutral. It feels like exposure. Not everyone who hates crowds experienced something traumatic. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could have been something as quiet as growing up in a home where you always had to read the room carefully, where being too much meant things got tense, where the safest version of yourself was the one that stayed small and watchful. In those environments, you trained yourself to monitor, to scan, to stay alert. And crowds? Crowds are that training on maximum volume. Now here's the part most people never get to. The real reason crowds drain you isn't the crowd. It's the version of yourself you feel like you have to manage inside the crowd. There's a quiet kind of self-surveillance that happens. You become aware of your posture, your expression, your laugh, whether you're talking too much or too little. You're not just in the room, you're watching yourself be in the room. And that split, that internal observer monitoring the external you, is genuinely exhausting in a way that's almost impossible to explain to someone who doesn't experience it. It's not social anxiety necessarily, it's something more subtle. It's the feeling that in a crowd, there's no single you that's safe to be. Because different people in that space might want or expect different versions of you. The colleague wants you professional. The acquaintance wants you friendly. The stranger is watching without any context at all. And some part of you is trying to hold all of that at once, automatically, without even deciding to do so. That's not a character flaw. That's a pattern. One that developed for a reason. One that served a function at some point. The sensitivity you carry into crowds was built in environments where reading the room kept you safe, where staying aware meant staying okay. It was adaptive. It made sense.
The exhaustion you feel now isn't a malfunction. It's the cost of a system that never fully got permission to stand down. Here's something worth sitting with. People who feel drained by crowds are often some of the most present, emotionally intelligent people in one-on-one or small group settings. The same wiring that makes large spaces overwhelming is the exact wiring that makes intimate connection feel meaningful and real. You're not someone who can't handle people. You're someone who processes people deeply. And there's a significant difference. Most people move through crowds on the surface. They pick up general social cues, they match the energy of the room, and they move on. They don't absorb it. They don't carry it home. You do. Which means when you leave a crowded event and feel like you need 2 days to recover, it's not because you're fragile. It's because you actually experienced the room. Not just the surface of it, but the emotional weight of it. And that takes something from you that others didn't even notice they were carrying. There's also something deeper here about identity, about who you feel like you get to be in public spaces versus private ones. A lot of people who struggle with crowds have a version of themselves that feels most real, most comfortable, most like them in quiet, in small spaces, in low stimulation environments. And crowds feel threatening not just because they're loud, but because they make that version of yourself harder to access. It's not that you disappear in crowds, it's that the version of you that feels most like home gets buried under the noise of managing everything else. Most of the language around this experience treats it like a limitation. I'm just introverted. I'm not good in social situations. I don't do well in crowds. But what if that framing is slightly off? What if the real story isn't that you struggle in crowds, but that you've spent years in environments that required a level of vigilance that normal spaces don't actually demand, and the crowd just happens to reactivate that vigilance automatically before you even have a chance to realize it doesn't apply here? That awareness, once it becomes conscious, starts to loosen something. You can't flip a switch and stop absorbing. The sensitivity doesn't just switch off because you now have language for it, but there's something that shifts when you understand the mechanism, when you stop labeling yourself as someone who can't handle crowds and start recognizing that what's actually happening is older than this moment, more understandable than you thought, and not about weakness at all. The nervous system that drains in crowds is the same one that made you careful, perceptive, loyal, deeply present with people who mattered to you. It was never a flaw running through you. It was a pattern protecting you. So, if you've always felt like you were wired wrong for the world,
too sensitive, too drained, too easily overwhelmed by what others seem to navigate with ease, this might be worth holding on to. You weren't built wrong. You were built for depth, for quiet, for the kind of connection that doesn't happen in crowded rooms. The exhaustion after a crowd isn't random. The scanning, the wall finding, the quiet relief of finally being alone again, none of it is random. It's a pattern, one that makes complete sense when you trace it back to where it started. And that awareness alone changes something. Not everything, but something. Because once you stop fighting the pattern and start understanding it, it stops feeling like a flaw you have to hide. It starts feeling like information. And if this explained something about yourself you didn't quite have words for before, there's more to understand. About the patterns you carry, the way you were shaped, and the parts of yourself that were always making sense, even when they felt like they weren't.